Good evening and welcome to the Methacton School Board reorganization meeting, as well as our work session, as well as our regular board meeting. Please rise for the pledge.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, first item of order here is to read into the record that the municipal general election of November 5th, 2013 in Montgomery County for the office of school director in the Methacton School District has been certified and is as follows. Brenda G. Hackett, 4,716 votes. Jim Phillips, 2,930. Herbert Roth III, 4,430. S. Christian Nascimento, 2,839. Young S. Cho, 2,374. And Brian Earnshaw, 2,635. As certified by Patricia Allen, Assistant Director, Montgomery County Voter Services Election Board. Okay, moving on to administration of the oath of office. Judge Rogers?
Good evening.
Good evening.
Do you want to take one at a time, or?
Probably up to the four members. Sure.
Hi, Judge. How are you?
Yes.
I, Brenda Hackett,
You solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support, obey, and defend
that I will support, obey, and defend
the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of this Commonwealth,
and the Constitution of this Commonwealth,
and that I will discharge the duties of my office
and I will discharge the duties of my office
with fidelity.
with fidelity.
Congratulations.
I,
State your name.
S. Christian Nascimento,
You solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support, obey, and defend
that I will support, obey, and defend
the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of this Commonwealth,
and the Constitution of this Commonwealth,
and that I will discharge the duties of my office
and that I will discharge the duties of my office
with fidelity.
with fidelity.
Congratulations. I, state your name.
I, Jim Phillips,
You solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support, obey, and defend
I will support, obey, and defend
the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of this Commonwealth,
and the Constitution of this Commonwealth,
and I will discharge the duties of my office
and I will discharge the duties of my office
with fidelity.
with fidelity.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
What?
I guess the fourth person should be able to do it himself, right? Yeah, remember?
I, Herbert B. Roth III,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support, obey, and defend
that I will support, obey, and defend
the Constitution of the United
the
States
Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of this Commonwealth,
and the Constitution of this Commonwealth,
and that I will discharge the duties of my office
and I will discharge the duties of my office
with fidelity.
with fidelity.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to the executive session report. The board met in executive session immediately following our board meeting on November 19th. At that meeting, we had an update on the conditional use hearing matter before the Worcester Board of Supervisors. We discussed a personnel matter relative to the public services, pupil services director vacancy. And we also had a conversation on the personnel matter relative to the Director of Curriculum and Assessment vacancy. Before moving on to public comment, I'd like to read a prepared statement of my own. This board and district needs to move on with our focus on the positive. I would ask that the community allow us to do this. Therefore, I have asked that my name not be placed in nomination for president. I do this out of respect for certain board members and for my concern for the Methacton School District. There are individuals out there who, for whatever reasons, would like to make my life an open book, and I will not allow it. A new opportunity presents itself. We will have new leaders on the board and within the district. We have the beginnings of a very strong team, and it will be up to each individual board member to decide if they want to be a part of that team. We're going to move forward in any event. So therefore, I'm very excited for what next year brings. Now I'll open the floor for public comment on any agenda item this evening. There being no public comment, I'll move on to the election of the temporary president. As soon as I can find my script here. Do I have any nominations for temporary president? Brenda.
I nominate Mark O'Neill.
Do I have a second? Jim? Any questions or comments from the board? All in favor? Motion carries 9-0. Thank you. Mark O'Neill is our temporary president and will preside over the election of the new president.
I am president, right?
Yep.
Because I've been meeting to change a lot of things around here, so let me get going. All right. The first order of business would be to ask for nominations for the president's role. Would someone like to make a nomination?
I'd like to nominate Christian Nascimento.
Do I have a second? Okay. Do I have any other nominations?
I'd like to nominate Kim Woodring.
Do I have a second? Okay. Are there any other nominations? Okay, I'll make a motion to close for the nomination of president. Sorry, I have to ask for a motion to close. Jim? Second? Herb? Okay. Any questions or comments from the board? Kim?
Yes, I'd like to make a comment. Excuse me. I would like to address the board and express my interest in the role of president for the coming year. My platform for my candidacy is as follows. Our board is most effective and efficient when all members are valued and contribute to the best of their abilities. Our communication with one another is essential within prescribed parameters. Our new president should make communication among board members a priority. Respecting different opinions is critical, as are good listening skills. In that vein, I am committed to leading this board's reconstruction with any help afforded in an action plan or steps if appropriate. Second, the board sets district policy and should establish policy it can uphold. Student achievement is part of our business, and moving our district ahead has become common rhetoric. Without clear goals, objectives, and standards of measuring progress, there is no way of moving forward. With Dr. Zerbe's entry plan progress and a comprehensive planning process in our near future, the board must develop goals for the district. I was a member of the last strategic planning committee and have public service strategic planning experience. I am committed to this task as we move into the next calendar year. Finally, the board must relate to its audience on all levels. We are in the business of schools and education. We must know school staff and the culture of our individual schools and communities. Being involved in volunteer work since 2005, I've developed a strong working relationship with school staff and established a network of community members. My role as a board member is enhanced by my role as a parent and volunteer. I have been dependable as both a volunteer and a board member. In the past 2 years, my meeting attendance at all meetings has been at the 90 to 95% level. I will continue to make my involvement and visibility within our schools a priority if elected board president. I appreciate your consideration. Thank you.
Any other comments? Christian?
First, I want to thank the board members for their consideration. I don't take my name being put into consideration lightly. I believe that we have significant challenges that we need to overcome as a board. This district's been through a lot. I believe that we're on the precipice of achieving great things with the students, with the community, and with the board working together as a whole. I'm committed, if given the chance, to lead this board and this district to new heights in student achievement, in financial stability. I think that my record as Finance Committee Chairman for the last 2 years, my record as a volunteer in the community and on the national level at various organizations that I've been involved in, and my experience in the corporate world would serve me well and help me lead the board if given that opportunity. So I thank each and every one of you for your consideration and look forward to the next year. Thank you.
Any other comments? All right, hearing none. With the nomination of Christian and Kim on the table, I will call for an election at this point. All of those in favor of Christian, please raise their hand. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And with that, that's sufficient to carry the election, I believe.
Call for the rest of the vote.
Okay. All of those that oppose?
No, I would say all those in favor of the other candidates.
All those in favor of Kim, please raise their hand. 3. Okay, with that, I think Christian is our new president. Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. I will now preside over the election of the vice president for the ensuing term. Will someone make a nomination for vice president, please?
Yes, I nominate Herb Roth.
Is there a second?
There's a second.
Second. Are there any other nominations?
Yeah, I nominate Kim Woodward for vice president.
Is there a second? Kathleen, the second. Any other nominations? Seeing none, I will ask for a motion to close nominations. Mark, is there a second? Second. All right, nominations, all those in favor of closing nominations? Okay, nominations are now closed. We have 2 nominations on the table. With the nomination, before we get to that, would any board members like to make any comments? Okay. With no comments, with the nominations of Herb Roth and Kim Woodring on the table, I will call for an election at this point. First, all those in favor of Herb Roth, raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All those in favor of Kim Woodring, raise your hand. With the vote of 6 votes, Herb Roth will take over as vice president for the term of 1 year.
So vote is 6 to 3.
Congratulations.
Congratulations. That completes, committee assignments will be taking at a regularly scheduled meeting in January. That completes all the items on the reorganization agenda. Any other questions or comments by board members on this agenda? Seeing none, is there a motion to adjourn the reorganization meeting? Second? All in favor? Okay. The reorganization is closed. Now we'll move into the combined work session and regular meeting agenda. Okay, forgive us, please. Okay, we're going to now move into the regularly scheduled board work session, regular meeting. Call this to order. We'll dispense with the Pledge of Allegiance since we've already done that. Announcements in executive session. The public is hereby advised of the audio and video recording of this meeting for the purposes of rebroadcasting. Executive session, there has been no executive session since Joyce last reported on that a few minutes ago. Attendance, all board members are currently in attendance. Recognition of guests and scheduled speakers. Dr. Zerbe.
Mr. President, there are no guest or scheduled speakers for this evening.
Thank you. We'll move into reports. First report is the Finance Committee. The Finance Committee met about an hour ago, and with one discussion topic on the agenda, the financing of the field project. There was a presentation by the Public Financial Management team around potential borrowings to finance the fields project. Moving on, Policy Committee. Great.
Oh, no, I have no report.
Okay. Property Committee, Mr. Phillips.
We have our conditional use hearing on the 5th. Please attend. Can't stress that enough.
Okay, thank you. Technology Committee, Mr. Roth.
I have no report. Thank you.
North Monco Technical Career Center, we have our Joint Operating Committee and holiday party in 2 weeks. Ms. Woodring, anything to report on?
That's good.
Intermediate Unit, Mr. Phillips.
Yes, big story on that is Dr. Shively is retiring in June. He's been serving there for about 15 years, and he'll be missed. He's done very well. He does a mentoring program for new superintendents, and he will be missed. Thanks.
Thank you. Legislative Liaison, Ms. Petraskis.
Yeah, just two hot items right now. As you all probably know, Chapter 4, or the Keystone exams, moved through the Pennsylvania Independent Regulatory Review Commission, and so these Keystone exams are going to be part of our lives. It's going to be 10 exams that the students are going to have to pass as graduation requirement. Currently, we have 3, one in algebra, one in biology, and one in literature. And the regulation now goes to the Attorney General for final review before implementation. The other bill that's getting a lot of attention, in fact, was in front of the Pennsylvania Senate today, is the Senate Bill 1085, which is the charter school reform bill. There were lots of emails sent out today asking you to contact your senator or your representative. Some of the ramifications, if this bill goes through, would be that colleges and universities would be able to authorize new charter schools without local approval. It would also eliminate the caps on charter schools, so that would allow for an expansion of charter schools in Pennsylvania. Currently, right now, you get a 3-year initial term for your charter, and they're looking to increase that to 5. And also, this bill would allow 2 charter schools to combine, and then the oversight of that would be transferred to the state. However, your local dollars would still be paying the tuition for these students to attend the charter school. So, don't know how that worked out today, but that's what was in front of the Senate. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Community Liaison, Ms. Barone.
Nothing to report for Lower Providence.
Mr. Roth.
Nothing to report for Worcester right now. Thank you.
Home and School Liaison.
I'm going to defer my report because Dr. Zerbe is giving a home and school presentation.
Very good. Student Board Representatives.
First of all, I hope all of you have had a wonderful Thanksgiving. And on that note, Tri-M has made 14 Thanksgiving dinner baskets for needy families in this area. And the Environmental Club has reapplied mulch around the high school pond and cleaned it out. And finally, the Kids Against Crisis Club is having a Beads for Life fundraiser soon. And all the funds will be going to women in Uganda who are starting up businesses.
Student Council sponsored the Penny Wars, and they raised $331.71, and this will be donated to the Bringing Hope Home, an organization that helps pay bills for cancer patients. Student Council also sponsored the canned food drive. It was a great success, and some homerooms raised over 200 cans, and this fed homeless people for Thanksgiving. The class of 2015 are raising beanies, $10 for winter hats and $12 for slouchies, and this is to raise money for the senior trip.
Thank you. Item number 11, Superintendent's Report. Dr. Zerbe.
Thank you. Under the Superintendent's Report, I have an update on the Home and School Association as requested by Mr. Phillips at our last public meeting. My intent this evening is to give the board an update to provide them with some history and to also provide them a status of where we currently stand. First of all, I want the board to understand that being the new superintendent at Methacton Schools, I want you to know that I recognized early on that the Home and School Association is an integral part of the programs and services that we offer here as a school district. At no other time in my career have I seen such a significant effort been made on behalf of volunteers to help the students in any school community. So I want to say that Methacton certainly is doing something tremendous and something well-deserved. And so one of the things that I recognized when coming on in October was that at some point in early mid-September, I'm not sure exactly when, but there seemed to be, in my opinion, based on what I discovered over a period of weeks and slash months, was that there was some internal conflict among different members of some of the home and school associations. And that conflict was really an issue, in my opinion, of some miscommunication that occurred. However, that may not necessarily be the interpretation of those people involved in that particular conflict. But in general, as an outsider taking a look, that miscommunication created some, for the lack of a better term, some hurt feelings as related to providing the good work that I previously mentioned that the Home and School Associations provide. With that said, over a period of weeks, I was, I would say, more or less inundated with requests and comments and updates on information related to that dialogue and the concerns that started with one of our associations and then spread to the other associations, meaning the other home and school associations in our other buildings. Basically, the case of that matter then got perpetuated based on the conflict that expanded into what's considered the Home and School District Council. For those of you not familiar with the structure, there are home and school associations for each of the 8 buildings within the district. And then there is a Home and School District Council that acts as a communication body to bring the associations together and the administration of the district to talk about needs and concerns that among those groups that they may be having. It was later identified by me that the conflict spilled over into the Home and School District Council, and in fact some officers of the District Council chose to resign as part of that conflict. And then subsequently, over a period of weeks, the District Council chose to have re-elections, and those elections then, in my opinion, spurred some additional concern among Home and School Association volunteers, and therefore more or less got to my level with some help of the home and school liaison for the board, bringing to my attention that, that some intervention really is required here. Typically, in these types of situations, being that the home and school associations really and the council are really separate organizations unto themselves, it was, in my opinion, incumbent upon me to really step in and assist those organizations in trying to resolve whatever conflict was apparent. So in doing that, I immediately called for a meeting on November 18th, and then prior to that meeting, there was already a predetermined meeting of the Home and School Council that was held at Worcester Elementary School, where after gathering all the information that I could, I presented a historic synopsis, and I made a recommendation. And basically what I talked about was that the concern fundamentally was a matter of significant miscommunication, which then impacted the trust relationships among the volunteers. And therefore, that with a loose structure perpetuated the appearance of concern and allowed no resolution for the concerns that the members had. So, for example, there was no process in place to resolve the conflict. There was no higher level or greater body that the volunteers that had the issue initially could take issue with. So I presented a plan, and the structure was similar to how it exists today, other than the fact that it was a 6-phase plan that talked about strengthening the bylaws of all the associations and the home and district council, instituting a code of conduct that would help provide a standard by which we all expect us to communicate and work together on, talked about tightening up some accounting practices that would help perpetuate a healthy accounting and sharing of financial practices. Also, actually, from my conversations with some of the association members, it was suggested to me by them that training needed to take place, and so that was another part of my 6-part plan, that there was training so that when volunteers moved from an elementary school, say, for example, Worcester Elementary School, where they spent 4 years or 5 years there, and they went to a 2-year school, say Skyview, that they would understand, the roles and responsibilities and the different aspects that home and school association would be responsible for that might be different than what they were used to as part of leadership at the elementary level. And then, of course, I offered that there should be a component for conflict resolution, so that there was a place that when issues did arise, that they had a structure and a sequence of things that people could follow in order to help get those issues resolved. And last but not least, we talked about things related to how we can best ensure, not only from a liability perspective, but from an accounting perspective, all of the aspects that are associated with running a healthy 501c3 type organization. So with that said, I recommended that we disband the Home and School District Council and then meet on the predetermined November 18th meeting with all the presidents of each building. And we did meet. And at that meeting, Council, Frank Bartle, myself, and the members of the presidents and some other members that happen to be representing various associations met, and we had discussions about those 6 components: bylaws. Let me just rehash that one more time. About the bylaws, the code of conduct, accounting practices, training, conflict resolution, and insurance practices. and basically divided the presidents into 3 committees. And those committees were charged with staying within a timeline and to report back this past Tuesday with their recommendations on the various assignments that they had. As it stands today, we've heard from all 3 groups, and I am confident in the leadership within those groups that we'll be able to reach a resolution and be able to get the structure back in place in a timely fashion. I can tell the board now that I was very anxious to try to get that structure in place as soon and as fast as possible, just so that we didn't lose a beat on the good deeds that the home and school associations do for our buildings. But most certainly, as I've had conversations with the members, the presidents from the home and school associations, their concern is not to rush through this and give them opportunity to explore a couple avenues that I feel are worthy of exploring. So they're in the process of doing that, and I feel that sometime in early January I'd be able to, or at least by our January 21st meeting, I could provide the board and the public with an update on where we stand. But I do want to just caution everyone to know that I think that there's some significant cooperation among the leaderships of all the associations, and I think that it's important that we all recognize that not only the good work that they do, but the good work that they can do continuing forward with a tighter structure, a more well-defined operation. And I think they all believe that, and I know they're working towards that, and so I have all the confidence in this group to get the job done. That ends my report. I'll be glad to answer any questions that people may have, but I wanted to make sure that the board knows that there have been some issues, and that I've stepped in, and I think that we're working towards some common resolution for the good of the district.
Thank you, Dr. Zerby. Any questions for Dr. Zerby? I thought you might.
Very good. Thank you for the report. Very good. A few questions. One is, did this slip through the cracks? I know we had Jeff Miller in and we brought you in, so there's a lot of stuff going on with the board. Just as far as how the board this has been presented on their plate, the timing of it, why it took this long for the board to get a hold of this. And another thing I'd like to see is accounting of the home school association as far as money, how it's been spent for the last couple of years. That way, if there's any trends, how they're doing their spending and fundraising. And lastly, whether we should form a operations committee, temporary, to make sure that the needs of the district are made, and also the home school, and that we have proper procedures and policies in place, and that committee would then recommend to the board and to the policy committee any instructions it may have to make this a better process, and that we don't fall back into this later date.
And just so I tried writing down those 3 items, and if I miss one, please remind me. But I think the first one was about the timing, and did this issue get lost in the shuffle? I'm not 100% certain that when Dr. Miller was here, he was fully aware of the level at which this issue came. It was apparent to me that early on in my tenure, it rose to the level of there were elections at the district council that just took it to the next level and kind of more or less precipitated my needing to get involved, because there was just nowhere else to go. But it's not to my knowledge that Dr. Miller knew that there was a significant issue in place.
Can I address that? answer to that, yes, Dr. Miller was aware. The situation arose on a Friday. By Monday morning, he was involved, and he was taking care of it. In the meantime, there was a change in leadership, so there were a few things that took some time. There were reports done. Mr. Whiteleather was involved. Everything was taken care of, but there was a change in leadership. Things did take too long to get resolved. In the meantime, then came an election, and then that's when you stepped in. So when there was an issue, as I said, Dr. Miller immediately was aware and was involved from the beginning.
Would it be too much to ask for a written narrative of start to finish with this, as far as what the issues were, who the people were involved were, as far as when the board members knew about it, or which ones, and how it finally got to this point? I think we need that to learn from the mistakes, or if there was any mistakes, and just making sure this process is flawless next time.
Well, if the board so desires, I mean, I will take their direction as regarding, doing a written narrative, certainly. But to answer the question number 2, regarding the accounting of home and school, I am aware that there was a review of one home and school books in particular, and there were no findings in that particular school. That was the school that was the initial issue, where the initial issue came up in. I can tell you that for item number 3, in regards to forming an operations committee and proper procedures, policies, and things of that nature, again, the purpose of our meeting on the 18th, and having Mr. Bartle in our presence, was to talk about the formalization of the home and school associations into a true 501c3 organization. Typically, most school districts, not all, but most school districts have PTAs, PTOs, home and school associations, or entities similar to that are true separate organizations from the school district. So for me stepping in, it was really not entirely my place to do so, but as the information came to me, there was no place for the organization to go. And therefore I felt, due to the fact that they are an integral part of our operations, it was important for me to step in. So with regards to forming a committee, or looking at procedures and policies, certainly part of our initial impact was to look at our procedures and policies related to this, and then really recognizing that these were external organizations, and the types of policies that we typically would have for external organizations are those that relate around how we would accept donations, gifts, things of that nature. I certainly can keep the board apprised of any progress that we make as part of moving forward with the Home and School Association. But again, I'm really trying to provide just a summary update on the situation, as well as take any other direction that the board sees necessary.
And then one of my concerns is with the field project, with fundraising, and that goes even to the foundation. Is that a 501c3 also? How's that organized?
It is.
It is.
It is.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, it's
Okay. And there's going to be there's a lot of these home and school organizations, a lot of money potentially can go through them, and it's something that it's under our roof and we have to housekeep.
Your point's well taken, and that's why, after I realized the severity of where we were and the fact that they needed help, that's why we're at this juncture. We're looking at many avenues, but one, Frank led us through a process to become a 501c3 that has all the accounting practices and the requirements that relate to being that type of organization. But essentially, those are the types of things that we discussed not only as an administration to the home and school presidents, but the presidents themselves were concerned to make sure that whatever they can do to tighten things up and whatever they need to do to become a true 501c3, I believe that they were willing to take those steps to move in that direction.
Thank you. Kim, go ahead.
Yeah, I guess I just want to reflect a little bit. We, and Maria, jump in here as a result of our policy work, but last March on our policy agenda was a huge sort of ad hoc committee that was assembled to look at the school-related organizations policy. That included some of the athletic team participants, and it was a holistic review of that policy because the policy wording was, let's see, the policy was not being followed, and philosophically, I think it was not possible to follow. So the series of events around March, of course, the exodus of one superintendent and the entrance of an interim, this was a huge undertaking, and the interim superintendent felt that it best he not become involved. So I guess my whole point in pointing this out is that had we maybe been able to modify that policy way back when, that policy had already been reviewed, I think, by Maria and I like 3 times, and we had made some headway. And so the unfortunate result here is that we didn't get our business done in a timely manner, and maybe that would have made a difference. That's all I have to say.
I think the real root cause here was communication. And you know, when you find out about things that are going on in the district from people that call you because they're frustrated, and when you have no knowledge of any of this because it hasn't been communicated to you, it was a major issue. So what I would like to suggest going forward, Dr. Zerbe, is that you do communicate to us everything that's taking place. I was at that meeting. I think it's a great start. I think it's going to fix lots of our woes here, but this was clearly a communication issue.
Okay. I think Dr. Zerbe has some good direction and has a good handle on everything, so we'll look forward to further reports from you on that. Moving on from reports, public comment on board action items. Is there any public comment? Candy got you beat, John. Sorry.
You go first.
Ladies first. So in accordance with board policy, we're going to ask that all public comment be limited to 2 minutes. Angela, would you help keep me honest on 2 minutes?
Okay, on the agenda, first off, the list of bills. I question here, there was a couple bills paid out to Hess Construction for issues at Woodland. One of them was a storm drain problem. The other was a sinkhole. Now, Woodland was just renovated a number of years ago, a couple years ago, around the same time as Skyview. A sinkhole, that's an issue because we're not known for sinkholes here in Upper Merion. I'm curious that the price was, and it was never discussed in any property meetings, or nobody was made aware that there were some issues at Woodland. The storm drain, I imagine that could happen in bad weather, but I know there's issues with an underground stream at Woodland, and there's nothing you can do about that. But I was just curious of what was the problem over at Woodland that we had a sinkhole. The other issue is tonight, apparently you're going to hire a director of curriculum, which has never been discussed publicly. The director of curriculum was a position that was created by the outgoing superintendent. I think a lot of our issues we had is we had no assistant superintendent after Dr. Martin left. Dr. Martin, who not only was the assistant superintendent, was also director of curriculum. If we would have had an assistant superintendent, maybe they could have just stepped in and kept the boat moving until we got a new superintendent. I think we were the only school district that does not have an assistant superintendent. We need one. We have a board vice president. Every governing body has a second in command. Director of curriculum, that's nice. Maybe we seriously need an assistant superintendent in case we ever have any problems in the future. That person who will be at every meeting, who will work with Dr. Zerbe, would be able to step in temporarily and handle things. We didn't have that. We had to bring in Dr. Miller. A lot of this, to your discussion earlier, got lost in the shuffle because there was too many moving parts. And I think that would solve. But the fact is, you're hiring someone tonight that was not discussed publicly or even been brought before the public, and you're just going ahead to hire.
Thank you. Candy, your time's up.
Your board calendar.
Your time's up, Candy.
Well, this is items you're going to vote on. Your board calendar.
Right, I mean, their policy is 2 minutes.
Are you going to stick with the board
Parliaments are
calendar
2.
this year? You have dates. I mean, you move.
Candy, your time's up. Thank you.
Oh, seriously. You know,
John?
Read board policy, Chris.
I am.
John Andrews, Lower Providence. Regarding the last minute or so of discussion, it follows up on a discussion about the need for communication. And it's my understanding that in the front page on regular meeting agendas, the board president is allowed to make exception to the 2-minute rule. But anyhow, with regard to my comments for this evening, on the list of bills, I think there's a continuing issue in the descriptions that are given. Sometimes there's an account number. That's not a description of a service rendered or an item purchased. Various employees of the district were listed, and the item description was EDU 9036, iPads and education. I think 16 of them at about $1,200 each. Then, with regard to the turf project, the Capital Reserve Fund had charges for Architectura. Architectura being the plan designer for almost $6,000, and then separate charges, not in the Capital Reserve Fund, but in the general fund for the attorney, where the description, the attorney or the solicitor, where the description was high school field lights for $13,000. It makes no sense to me that the same project is being billed to separate funds. I think that's something that needs correction. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Any other comment on board action items? Okay. Moving on to board meeting minutes. Is there a motion to approve the board meeting minutes from the work session meeting held on November 12th, 2013, and the regular board meeting held on November 19th, 2013? Motion, is there a second? Second by Joyce. All those, any comments or questions?
Yeah.
Okay.
I was on vacation. I wasn't here for both of those meetings, so I'm not going to vote.
You can abstain? Okay. Any other comments, friend?
Our student representatives are not identified as being present. I think it would be good to have them included in the minutes.
Okay. Dr. Zerbe, can we make that change? Okay. Any other questions or comments? So the motion is to approve both meeting minutes with the addition as made by Brenda. All those in favor say aye, or raise your hand. Opposed? Abstention? Thank you. Passes. Item number 9, fiscal items. Mr. Whiteleather.
Thank you. I have a lengthy list of items this evening. Just kidding. 2 quick items for you. The first one is our monthly list of bills on for your approval. And the second item is an informational, obviously our treasurer's report. Since our meeting is so early in the month, we have not received our bank statements to do our reconciliation for the month. So we will be providing you that information at our January board meeting. And with that, I will ask for your approval on item 9.1. Thank you.
Is there a motion? Joyce, second. Herb? Questions or comments? Jim?
Line 79,900, Teacher Direct, the block party 7 for $4,487. What is that line item? And you don't have to answer that right now. I mean, that's just one that I saw that I'd like to understand. And there was one other one I had. I'll find it. I'll get to you on it. Thanks.
Any other questions for Stuart? Comments? Okay. All those in favor? Opposed? Unanimous? All right. The next item, personnel items. Mr. Harney.
Yes, this evening we're asking for your approval on 2 resignations classified. I'm also very happy to ask for your approval this evening of the employment of Mary M. Katona as Director of Curriculum and Instruction and Assessment at the salary as listed. We're also asking for your temporary employment of Fred Shipman as the Interim Pupil Services Director as Dr. Fay departs us. We have 1 employment classified for your approval. We have 1 compensated professional development leave. We have 4 uncompensated leave professionals for your approval, 1 uncompensated leave classified, 1 supplemental contract for Glenn McCann as a, where do we have that? As a mentor. We have 2 additions to the classified substitute list and the approval of the attached list of volunteers.
Is there a motion to approve the items as presented by Mr. Harney?
Could I ask for, I would like 1014 extracted, please.
Yeah. Anything else that anyone else wants to take separately? No? Okay. So is there a motion to approve the items presented by Mr. Harney with the exception of 1014? So 10-1 through 1013. Motion, Mr. Roth, is there a second?
And 10:15.
Oh, and 10:15, sorry. So 10-1 through 10:13 and 10:15. So motion by Herb, second. Brenda. Discussion? Questions? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor? Opposed? Unanimous? Okay, and now 1014, volunteers. Is there a motion to approve the list of volunteers as presented? Herb, second. Brenda, discussion, questions?
Yeah, I have to recuse myself. I'm on the list.
Thank you. Any further discussions, questions? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor? Opposed? 8-0. Very good. Next item, programs. Dr. Zerbe.
Thank you. Before I talk about item 11, I'd just like to welcome Mary Katona. Mary comes to us from Twin Valley School District. She is currently a doctoral student in the Drexel University program. Mary, if you would mind standing for us. And we welcome her. With regards to programs, 11.1 field trips, approve the trip for Methacton High School winter track team to New York City Armory, New York, New York, for a track meet on January 3rd through the 4th, no cost to the district. And item number 2, approve the trip for the Methacton High School winter track team to Penn State University for a track meet on January 24th and 25th, no cost to the district.
Is there a motion to approve both field trips? Maria, second. Mark, discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Opposed? Unanimous? Okay, moving on to policy. Dr. Zerbe.
I have no policy-related items.
Okay. Other, Dr. Zerbe.
Item 13.1, the 2004 school board meeting schedule as listed, to approve that for the 2014 school year. In addition to that, I have 2 other items. I am making a recommendation for the scheduling of a special meeting on January 7th, 2014, for the purposes of presenting the field project update to the board and the public, and to gain authorization to solicit bids for those projects. In addition to that, I want to provide the board with an update with regards to our Methacton Education Association agreement. Back in September, we approved that agreement as a board, and we are still working with the association to finalize some of the language. So if you recall, when we approved that as a board, we approved that with the knowledge that there were at least 3 items that we needed to clarify the language on, and we're still working through that process. So I just want to make sure that everyone knows that we are working with the association leadership to get that language squared away, and we hope that we'll be able to have those signed agreements on the table shortly.
Anything else, Dr. Zerbe?
That's all I have.
Okay, so can I have a motion to approve the District Board of School Directors meeting calendar for 2014 with the addition of the special meeting for the field project update on January 7, 2014?
Can I ask a question first?
Sure.
I know in the past we've talked about the summer schedule with not that many people coming or being able to over the summer, as well as, vacation and things. Are we going to adjust that at all to 1 month just having one, or are we just going to keep it as 2 and have people not come?
Well, right now we have scheduled for 2. What's the board's pleasure?
We can always amend it when time gets closer, depending on what's happening.
Yeah, in the past, we have
just had one.
We've
July and
canceled, and I
August.
think it's better to schedule the meetings and get them on a calendar. That way, if we do need to keep them, they're there. We can always, adjust it as we need.
Everyone okay approving as is? We can take a look at it at some point in 2014 and make any adjustments to, I guess, probably July and August. Those are probably the heavy vacation days. Everyone okay with that?
Yep.
Okay. Any other questions or?
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
I have a comment. I know on the new calendar, it has all the work sessions and the meetings here. And I know that when we decided to have the work sessions here, it was going to be on a let's see how it works basis. I personally liked our work sessions better when they were at Skyview because I felt we were able to let our hair down, roll up our sleeves, and work and get something done. We were closer to each other. We saw each other. There weren't any assigned seats. I just felt it was more relaxed atmosphere to work at. I feel when we had the work sessions here, just because you're here in this room, all of a sudden it becomes more formal, and you're not as willing to talk or discuss things as I felt that we were over at Skyview. So that's my personal opinion. I don't know if anybody else feels anything about it.
Well, I'll dovetail into that too, Maria. In a way, I agree with you because the way the tables were, it was a nice close-knit group. We were, we tried this new format here with the horseshoe shape in this room here, and I don't know if we've had enough time to really give that one a fair shake, give that format a fair shake, but it may be something we need to consider doing again. I don't know. I did like the informality of it. For the first time in a long time, we actually were really talking about stuff. The board was really open and talking, and when we were moving around between the schools, I thought that was a good idea too. I know it's a logistical issue to be dealt with, but I thought it was a good idea at the time. Maybe it's something we can look into a little bit further as an idea of maybe doing it. I don't know, but I just thought it was a good format that we had before, but I am willing to give the new shape here a chance. As far as the assigned seating goes, I could go either way on that, but I think it would be, I don't think we necessarily need assigned seating at a work session, but for board meetings, I think it would help.
So why don't we move forward with what we've agreed to recently, and if we want to change that, midstream or throughout, we can do that. That way we're not jerking the public back and forth. Is that agreeable to everyone? Okay. Okay, any other comments or questions? Mark?
Yeah, a question on the contract. Dr. Zerbe, so...
Mark, why don't we get through the calendar
Okay.
first, and then we'll get into that. Okay. All right, so is there a motion to approve the meeting schedule as presented for 2014 with the addition of the January 7th Fields meeting? Jim, is there a second? Mark? Further discussion, comments, questions? All those in favor? Opposed? Unanimous. Okay, so now let's get into the MEA agreement. Mark, go ahead.
Dr. Zerbe, if you could just elaborate a little bit the implications, because it was my understanding, I guess, implicit that we had a new contract in effect. So it's not in effect, it's being worked on. So are the terms of the old contract still in place?
It's our understanding that all but the items that we're still working on are in force. So, for example, because the agreement was approved by both the association and by the board, continuing on getting these items done, we're trying to get those particular items done with hopes that we can have it to you shortly. But it's based on four particular areas that we're trying to address. So it's our belief that we are currently using under that agreement, with the exception of those four areas.
And short, what do you mean by short lease? Days, weeks, months?
We've been working on the issue ever since September to resolve the language. So I'm hoping that we're closer to that resolution. I don't know, Mr. Harney, if you have any additional comments that you might want to provide.
No, just that the fact that the items of discussion aren't pertinent to the day-to-day operations per se. There's language around, and I don't want to get too much into it at this point because we're still in discussions, but there's language around how we deal with personnel in certain situations. Nothing to do with the salary that has been approved, nothing to do with any of the health care that we've agreed to. This is also very normal operations. It takes a long time once you've agreed to the contract to hammer out the specifics on certain language issues. So I don't have a time frame for you. I'm hoping it will be very soon. We met with them probably 3 or 4 weeks ago and should hopefully be meeting with them again soon.
And can you confirm that the contract is enforced in all ways minus these specific items? Is that interpretation correct?
That is our understanding.
Thank you.
What's the cadence, you say soon, what's the cadence of the meetings that are happening around this?
It was meetings and then it's emails back and forth through language changes.
Okay.
And frankly, the holidays are never a benefit when you're trying to get something done in an expedient way. So we got jammed up a little bit last week. I haven't heard anything this week. There's some language that we're expecting from MEA. I've sent language to them on specific issues, but haven't heard back.
I think maybe, can we get a detailed update in the next, I guess maybe executive session will be appropriate since it's a contract matter?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions on the MEA agreement? Okay, moving on, item number 14, dates for board members' calendars. January 21st, 2014 is our next work session, and the 28th is our next regular board meeting. Item 15, old business. Any old business? Okay. Any new business?
I would like to make a request that when we do have our field project update, I'd also like a plan put together on how we're going to go forward with fundraising as well as the rest of the plan. I feel like we have been going back and forth, and we do not have any concrete plan. So if you could have that ready for us, including the financial end of it, and not just what we're going to borrow, but how we're going to go about using, having the foundation involved and whatever else it might be.
If it's the pleasure of the board, I can certainly do that, but I want to reiterate a similar comment that I had at the Finance Committee meeting, that it's my understanding that the Fact and Education Foundation is the group that's planning on doing fundraising with relationship to this project and possibly others in the future. I certainly a superintendent can advise them and ask them to support us and to get that information together for you. But I can't dictate to them how they're going to fundraise for this particular project, unless the board has other avenues that we would rather look into to raise funds. I'm just not certain how I would provide that if they're not prepared to provide that to me.
Can we, so to address Kathleen and others' concerns, can we reach out to the foundation, get what their plan is, figure out what they need from us, and include that in the presentation, and then that may spur more questions, or they may have something set in stone. I just haven't seen it.
Will do.
Well, as well as, Christian, if you remember about a year or so ago, you even provided some company names that we had talked about in our meetings that we would potentially look into how that would work with us and how we could do it. I mean, can we please start to pursue this stuff? We have to do something.
I mean, that was when Dr. Quinn was still here. I'm not sure what was passed along. So we can certainly circle back and find that out, and we can provide those again. Jim, you have a comment?
Yes. One of the things that we spoke about was, first we have to get through the approvals, and it's pretty tough to fundraise for something that we don't know if we're going to be allowed to even do. And then also we have to get the bid package out. Well, and part of that plan is we got to figure out if we first need it, because as soon as everybody starts getting into that plan, if this drags on for another year, those people are going to get disinterested, go away. There's going to be new people coming up through the ranks with their students. And so when we get the approvals and we know what it's going to look like and what it's going to cost, then when you go to fundraise, people understand, hey, this is the size of the project, this is what it's going to look like, and it's going to make it easier, hopefully, to raise the money. And fortunately for the baseball field, everybody's seeing how private money is working there and how that's turning out. But we're probably a month or 2 months away from it, depending on how the township goes and our bid packets come back. And that's January 7th. That's part of our meeting there, is discussing that. And when we have that information, we'll know what kind of nut we're looking towards and what we want to present to the public also.
Just so I can add, I used to do fundraising for a living. When you have a capital campaign, you always get out and get your donors lined up before you announce to the public what you're going to do, when you're going to break ground, and everything else. You have it lined up, you have things ready, and that's what we need to do. There are people that want to help, and we need to have a plan. I'm not asking that we take any money out of anybody's pocket. We have to have a plan. We can't sit here and keep going back and forth.
So to the point before, I think that the board previously, or previous board, had agreed that the foundation was going to lead that because of their 501c3 status. So I think that, again, Dr. Zerbe, you can go to them and find out what their plan is. If they have a plan, and if there's not a plan there, or there's holes there, we can work with them to fill that in. Okay.
And just on one note, past history with Methacton with the lights, 20 years ago, they raised about $165,000. They even bought the lights, and they didn't happen. I wish Mr. Evans was here. He always asked what happened to the $165,000. So, and that was something people have remembered. So going into this, when there's so much doubt that it's even going to happen, we have this black cloud over it. So and also the point of the foundation, they're going to have to step up and come up with that plan as far as raising capital campaign.
Okay. New business? Any other new business? Okay. Courtesy of the floor. Mary Jane?
Hi, Mary Jane Barbone, Eagleville. Congratulations to our two new officers of the board. That's great. And I just have a question in general, and I don't know if our council can answer it, or last month, two members of the public were, I believe, misguided during courtesy of the floor that their comments were inappropriate for the time. I just want to make sure the courtesy of the floor is still courtesy of the floor, that any topic can be brought up. It was during courtesy of the floor that like I said, 2 members of the public were kind of told that the comments during that time had to be related to agenda topics. So I just want to make sure that nothing changed there. And the other thing is, I just want to make a comment on the board meetings being held. I personally think, and I think in the public, everybody is always questioning where is the meeting. So I think having it in one location and one time, I think is a good thing. Thanks.
Yes, if I can answer the question. Actually, what was said was that there are 2 places on the agenda for public comment. The first place on the agenda for public comment is for action items that are on the agenda. And I did make the comment that that should be confined to action items on the agenda. Secondly, with respect to the courtesy of the floor is designed around the requirements of Pennsylvania's Sunshine Law. Pennsylvania's Sunshine Law requires that the board take public comment, not only with respect to items that are on the agenda, but also with respect to items that could be on an agenda. Those type of comments that are within the board's jurisdiction. And that's what I suggested. When comments were made that were within the personal prerogative of individual board members, or comments are made that are not related to potential action that could be taken by the board, then that is beyond the scope of what we take as either the initial or the subsequent action, the initial or subsequent public comment section.
Thank you.
Excuse me. I have...
Can you come forward and state your name and where you're from? If you're going to make public comment, come to the microphone, please.
Okay.
Thank you.
My comment has to do with...
Before you start, could you state your name and
Okay.
where you're from?
My name is Ed Parks. What else would you like to know about me?
Where you live is fine.
29 away.
I don't need the address, just the township is fine.
I live within the township.
Worcester, Lower Providence?
Lower Providence.
Okay, thank you.
I'm here to speak on behalf of my neighbor over here, Larry Carter. But the issue that he's faced with also has to do with some changes that could be made in the way school taxes are assessed to ensure fairness. So, since I tend to be long-winded, I will read instead of just talk.
Keep it within 2 minutes, sir.
Okay, I can read fast. I was shocked to hear that my next-door neighbor, Larry Carter, over here, was assessed a penalty of more than $500 for not paying school taxes. When I talked with Larry, he said he never received a bill for school taxes for the year 2013-14. Then when I later talked with my wife, who's like, does everything to the 99th percentile, which can be good or it can be a pain in the ass, she said she also failed to receive a bill for school taxes, but she had to call the tax collector to request a copy. I've noticed that Larry does everything to the nth degree. I hate being next to him on the lawn, because he even put in some underground water. So he does everything well. Now, I strongly believe that the township, if they don't receive any money on time, they should do something like have a postcard ready. Hey, bozo, you know, we haven't heard from you. If you look at Larry's stuff, I'm sure he pays early. He never received the bill. So also, before such an extreme penalty for overdue, check the homeowner's previous payment record on school taxes, and make an exception if taxes have been previously paid on time or early.
Larry, do you want to speak for yourself?
Thank you.
That's all I have to say now.
Hello, my name is Larry Carter.
Larry, Lower Providence?
Yes, Lower Providence. I used all the avenues I could, and so that's why I'm here this evening. From my understanding, nothing can be done in my situation because, as the tax collector told me, it's the law, it's your responsibility to see that your taxes are paid on time. My thing is that I've always paid my taxes on time when I received a tax bill. In fact, for the last 10 years or so, I've paid my taxes ahead of time, or when I first received a notice to get the 2% discount. I think, or I'd like to see some kind of mechanism put in place to see that this doesn't happen to anyone else, because it's not going to happen to me again. I know that now because I can't afford it for it to happen to me again. But I'd like to see some kind of mechanism put in place, a reminder, like my neighbor said. You know, I got a notice 7 days after the penalty had been imposed. Now, they say they sent out the tax notices in July. I normally pay at the beginning of August or before the 31st of August. Sometimes between the 31st of August and October the 31st, a reminder could be sent out to somebody saying, you know, your taxes is due. That's all I'm asking for. $500, I'm sorry, I'm kind of nervous, but 2% discount and a 10% penalty, I mean, that's wiped out 5 or 6 years of me paying on time, trying to be a good citizen. All I ask is for a little fairness. So I'd like this topic put on the agenda, or maybe or something to the effect. So I mean, you got a lot of senior citizens that, you know, this might be oversight. I'm a senior citizen. It was oversight on my part. I'm waiting for the tax bill to come. I'm waiting.
Sir, I apologize. I have to cut you off now. We're at the 2-minute mark, but we'll take both your names down and we'll try and look into the situation, see what happened, and we'll try and address it as best we can. Thank you. I apologize that happened to you. Yeah, so just to make sure that we're clear, we can get that after the meeting, sir, but just be clear, the tax bills are not in our jurisdiction. There's a tax collector that handles that, but we can try and look into it as best we can. Is there anyone else for courtesy of the floor? Mr. Andrews.
Okay, just relative to the two individuals, I met with the one individual regarding their tax bill. Essentially, the situation, as I understand it, what has happened is our tax collectors, elected officials, are charged with the collection of taxes for each of our municipalities, Lower Providence and Worcester. When the tax collector generates the bills that are then mailed out to each of the individual property owners, at the point that it leaves the tax collector's hands to go into the postal service, we have an assurance, for lack of a better, that that bill is going to be delivered to the property owner. To that extent, in the cases where it may not have been delivered, obviously we don't know that. There's no type of certified mail or anything of that sort. We get a receipt back saying that the property owner received the tax bill. To the extent that, you know, in the discussions with the property owners that I spoke with, several of them, you know, is explained to them that if the school district and the tax collector would make a mistake relative to getting the bills out or something along those lines, that there was an error on our part, there's obviously something that we would need to address. to the extent that everything that we've done relative to generating the tax bills and sending out the tax bills was in accordance with established procedure. It unfortunately it falls into the situation where, on a personal level, I truly feel for your situation, and as I say, I spoke with this one gentleman, and I truly feel for the situation. Unfortunately, we're bound by the rules that govern when a tax bill is paid. Any tax bill that's paid between July 1 and August 31 is a 2% discount. Any bill paid between September 1 and October 31 is that base amount, which is a flat amount. And then anything from November 1 through December 31 is at 10% penalty. We don't have a choice in that regard. Those are stipulated as we have to require those type of penalties and/or discounts. Obviously, the personal side of me feels for the, individuals that perhaps didn't receive the bill, but to the extent that there's something that we have no control over relative to it leaving our hands is where the issue resides, and relative to us looking at possibly doing other resolutions as far as perhaps mailing out secondary notices earlier on, things of that sort. I mean, obviously those are options that we can explore, but as I say, unfortunately, the situation as it arises, we really don't have any discretion in regard to the penalty phase, and unfortunately it comes back as a pretty substantial payment on your part aside from your tax bill. And my discussions with several homeowners in that regard, I tried to express that hopefully in a way that they understood. I truly felt for their situation on a personal level, but unfortunately there's nothing we can do operationally to waive those type of penalties in these particular cases.
Thanks, Stuart. Sorry, John, go ahead. Go ahead.
I know it's not our responsibility, but if they do send letters out that the amounts are overdue immediately at the overdue point, it would make sense to send that a week or two earlier and just say, if you're not paid by the 30th, whatever the particular time happens.
We can give that feedback to them, but they control that, not us.
But if we had to get that feedback, who does that go through? It's a procedural change that we couldn't affect, but who would it be communicated to and how?
Well, the two tax collectors are elected officials. I mean, we can obviously work with them to a certain extent to see if they would be willing to adjust something relative to the notifications that they would send out to the property owners. But, again, that's something that, would have to be looked at. Just really wouldn't have an answer for you right this moment.
Yeah. Thanks. Okay, John, sorry. The floor is yours.
Do I have any time left?
2 minutes, Rob.
Well, we got a new strict president, you have to understand.
The clock is ticking now.
It's that time of the year when politics can trump reason in school districts, among other places. Recently, there appear to be way too many instances where the superintendent, a board employee charged with education delivery, is dragged into board politics and issues unrelated to education. I cite the DUI attorney writing to him, the solicitor discussing the DUI with the superintendent. Those are not education issues. The innocent use of the MSD logo on some director campaign literature. A former superintendent using the solicitor to review the supervisor candidacy of an administrator, to name only some that I know of. Let's get petty politics out of Methacton, let reason prevail, and let the superintendent work the education. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Candy, go ahead.
Candy Igavall. Can I make one suggestion on next month's agenda? Have Angela's report go before courtesy floor so she won't be forgotten.
Yeah, we're actually going to bring that up further.
There, okay. Just so I don't forget you. There was a comment made earlier about last meeting and two of the members of the public. School Board Policy 903, which is public participation at school board meetings, states that the public participants are allowed to bring their comments and matters of concern, official action, or deliberation. I went back and rewatched the meeting tape a number of times. And at any point, I didn't hear any personal attacks made. I heard people offering their opinions. I'm going by school policy. The board, according to Board 006, which is meetings, the school board is supposed to follow their own policy, but you have to read your policy to follow it. Now, as far as violating the Sunshine Law, I have a copy of the Sunshine Law right here, and I also have a copy of the agreement that the school board signed to settle it. I don't know where the Sunshine Law covers the public, covers a governing body. I don't see how I'm violating the Sunshine Law if I ask a question. Also, the meeting, the public has a right to an expectation of an answer to their questions. I've been coming about 7 years. Very, very rarely do I get any answers to my question. Thankfully, Mr. Bartle has on more than one occasion answered my questions. But I suggest starting the new year, maybe the board needs to read the Sunshine Act and find out how you announce executive sessions, when, and you read school policy. Because this stuff is not hard. And a couple of these have been revised. One as far as June on your meetings. It's very interesting. I suggest you bring yourself up to speed. Maybe I wouldn't have to come at you and try not to beat you up. But, you know, I'm just going by policy. Thank you.
Thanks.
And have a nice holiday.
Merry Christmas.
Thank you. If I can briefly answer, since you addressed your comments to me, I have never suggested that members of the audience could violate the Sunshine Law. That's not possible. The board is required, as what I said, is required to take public comment in two areas. One area, which are matters that are on the agenda. The other area is matters that are within the jurisdiction of the board. If you take a look at the Sunshine Law, it says that specifically in there. The section of 903, which you read, and I have it right in front of me, is essentially a paraphrasing of that. If you take a look at the law, it talks about matters of concern, but it talks about matters of concern that can come before the board. That's what the Sunshine Law says. So that's where my reference is. And if you'd like, I'll provide you a copy of that so you can take a look at it, read it yourself, and maybe you'll have a comment in the future. Okay? Thank you.
Yeah, Joe.
Good evening. Joe Ferrero, 12 Pine Tree Drive, Audubon. Gentleman here needs $500, as I understand, and I see supplemental contracts in the amount of $931.10 for Glenn McCann as a mentor for the Methacton High School. The gentleman is a retired gentleman. Would it be possible to find a grant of, say, $500 for the gentleman to be a mentor to other people? Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else for courtesy of the floor? Okay, moving on. Dr. Zerbe, you don't have any answers to questions or anything? Or do you?
I have one response to questions. I just want to bring the board up to date on a question from the last meeting regarding our geothermal analysis. I am working with our Director of Facilities to gather that information, and we plan to have that information for the public and the board at the next scheduled meeting.
Thank you. Angela, save the best for last.
Yes. You're too kind. I just wanted to let the public know that they are all invited to attend many of the holiday concerts that will take place in all of our school buildings. And the entire schedule is available on the website, and it culminates with the December 19th Methacton High School Holiday Concert, which will be held at our COLA at 7:30 p.m. Thank you. Happy holidays.
Thank you. Okay, last item is adjournment. Is there a motion to adjourn? Mark, second. Herb, all in favor? Meeting is adjourned. Happy holidays, everyone. See you in 2014.